I'm Debbie Bell Hosking for Finextra TV, bringing you another part of our Predict 2026 series. And this time I'm talking to Clare Gambardella, who is the Chief Customer Officer of Zopa Bank. And we're going to be looking at making those more selective, value-driven choices when it comes to AI. So Clare, welcome to our studio.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Thank you for having me.
Well, delighted to have you here. And I'm also delighted to ask you this first question. Because when we talk AI, and we have conversations similar to the one we're having now, about AI, Gen AI, agentic AI, quantum AI, we always talk about all these wonderful use cases. But AI is not the shiny new thing anymore. So what use cases of AI should organizations be actually leaving behind as they move forward through 2026?
I think it is such an interesting question because, as you said, we often focus on the positives rather than the not so successful parts of the story. I think, first of all, we should say that AI has and will continue to, I believe, significantly disrupt the UK finance industry. That has happened before, for example, with the transition to digital banking, but there is certainly a big AI shift ahead of us. And I think that's really necessary, with over 50% of the population actually already using Chat GPT for financial advice. It is very important that regulated entities step into this space and do so confidently. When I was thinking about which AI use cases we should kill, I think it's a tricky question to generalise on for a couple of reasons. One is that obviously every organisation is different, but also because AI itself, as you mentioned, is evolving so quickly. So use cases or applications that may not have been viable or successful a year ago are actually much more viable and potentially successful today. So what I think is actually really important is organisations having very strong criteria in place for how they judge the success of use cases so that they can monitor that over time and make timely, value-driven decisions about where AI is and isn't working. So, for example, it might be the case that they monitor, is AI actually saving work or is it creating more work because the error rate is high and therefore the human oversight has to be very high in correcting mistakes? Is it the case that actually the consumer experience of this and the score that consumers are giving the experience drops and therefore it's not actually helpful for the organisation? Is it the case that it's very difficult to understand regulatory outcomes? So I think having these type of success criteria and being ruthless in applying them rather than just assuming that every AI process is therefore a better process is actually a really helpful way of thinking about this.
And it's that keyword value. You know, what does your business actually do? What is the value that AI is bringing to what your business does? And let's say you're on a positive track with this. How do banks and fintechs go about upskilling their workforce in order to be ready for this fast pace of change?
So I think that organisations are generally knowing that they have to step into this and embrace the change in order to be competitive going forward. At Zopa, we work a lot with fintechs across different parts of the industry, and this is a discussion that we have very frequently. I believe that, firstly, if you look at the statistics that we have worked upon with Juniper Research, it's expected that the finance industry in the UK will spend about £1.8 billion between now and 2030 investing in AI. And most of that will be behind trying to drive productivity, consumer experience and cost savings. So there is undoubtedly going to be a big change coming, particularly in operational and administrative roles. For us, we have taken quite strong actions within Zopa Bank to try and upskill our people. So we all have enterprise Chat GPT licenses. We're starting to think about how we train everybody against usage of Chat GPT, both in their roles and more generally. And we have seen that work really well with around 500 custom GPTs created across the business to do specific tasks. We do believe, though, that it's not enough to do that within Zopa, and that's why we've created Jobs 2030, which is an industry-wide pledge to reskill 100,000 finance workers by 2030 in AI disciplines. we believe that that is what is needed in order to make workers in the sector competitive. And while I can't announce that today, we are bringing on board our first tranche of partners for that very soon. And we've seen very wide-scale interest, both within fintech and beyond. So I think it's very, very important initiative and a very important topic for companies to engage on.
It's really nice to hear about your first-hand upskilling endeavours and your experience there. Yeah. So we're talking about the workforce. And that is now about upskilling and enriching people's use of AI within your organization. But of course, many organizations also within them, employees have concerns about AI and the use of AI. How do you suggest organizations manage that?
Sure. And I mean, I think that, as I mentioned, when you're thinking about that amount of money being poured into AI development over the next 5 years and the types of use cases that we've discussed, there is a prediction that across the industry that will displace or change potentially around 27,000 jobs by 2030, which is obviously a very big number, particularly in legacy banks that have big networks, quite a lot of manual processes. What I think is really important is that this will be a generational change in much the same way as when, for example, computing entered the workplace in a wide-scale way, but it's also a generational opportunity. And I think organisations need to engage with and talk to their employees about the skills that they will need to be successful in the future and how they can gain those skills. And that's why, for us, conversations like Jobs 2030 are very important industry-wide, because some organisations have the capability, the capacity to train people. Some don't. There are lots of smaller organisations where that might be harder. And so actually thinking about this as an industry-wide problem where we need to create a pool of people whose careers are fit for the future, who have the skills that they need, who are not feeling worried, but actually feeling more in control of their destiny, is really, really important. And so I would encourage any organisations that are thinking about this to check out the pledge. And also we would love to, to learn from other people. I don't think that this is something that companies need to tackle on a one-by-one basis. But I think that dialogue is really, really important.
So I'm hearing a lot here. I'm hearing about the importance of upskilling, but also an industry dialogue.
I believe so, yes, because I think ultimately, if we want fintech in particular to be strong and healthy going into the future, and we are very lucky in the UK, right, that we have one of the leading fintech markets in the world, and part of that is because the quality and depth of our talent pool. If we want that to continue into the future, then we need to take responsibility for developing that talent pool, right, for helping people to learn new skills and to essentially kind of build the industry that we will be in 5 or 10 years rather than the industry we are now.
Thank you, Claire. It's a really nice, thought-provoking place to end our discussion and taking care of that talent pool.
Thank you.
Thank you.